On this edition, we're talking about EIMs or in-ear monitors and how you can get them up and running for your band for a whole lot less than you think. So before we get into the technical gear that's needed to do in-ear monitors, let's talk quickly about the why. The biggest why for us was we moved into a new space in which we couldn't handle all of the stage volume we were getting from amplifiers and musicians on stage. We needed to cut all of that stage volume back so that we had more control in the room and that we didn't end up having this really terrible mix due to all of this super loud stage volume. So we ended up moving our amps into a closet. We ended up getting rid of our bass amp. We ended up getting rid of all of the gear on the stage, all the monitors, and we switched over to in-ears. Now, I didn't have money for an Aviom system or any of the new systems that come with digital consoles these days, and we were still using an analog console when we first switched. So I had to figure out a way that we could do this inexpensively. Now, the biggest piece of gear besides your actual headphones is how to convert the signal from your board into headphone signal. And in the midst of finding this, we actually found some cool stuff that made it work even better for us. One issue that we had is we only had 4 monitor sends on our board. So we only had 4 different mixes. And before, when we were using amps, we could just say, hey, bass player, you're going to hear out of your amp and you're going to hear your amp volume and other people on the stage. But now that we're using in-ear monitors, we can't just say, hey, you can only hear yourself and no one else. That wouldn't really work. So I had to figure out a way to share 4 monitor sends among 8 musicians and still have some personal touches to it. And this is where our headphone amplifier came into place. Now, we got the standard Rolls headphone amp, and this Rolls headphone amp is really nice because it actually has 2 different inputs on it. So there is a monitor input and there's a mic level input, and there's actually a mic through. And so what we actually did is we looped out of all of our inputs. So our acoustic guitar looped out of his DI box and took one output and sent that to the board, and out of the other output of the DI box, he went into an input on the Rolls. And this made it so that he could have individualized control of his guitar, so he could turn his acoustic up or down as much as he wanted without it affecting anyone else. And then we put a monitor send in there that he shared with one other person. So this made sharing a little bit better because neither of you had to overly hear the other person too much, because at the end of the day, musicians really want to hear themselves. They want a reference of everything else, but they really want to just hear themselves. So we were able to loop out of DI boxes for that. We actually got a bass DI box that had, I think it's called a Sans amp, bass preamp that had its own output similar to a regular DI box. And then for our electric guitars, what we ended up having to do, and this was a little bit tricky, is we ended up having to route mic signal through a microphone in a closet and then out of that microphone into our monitor box and out of our monitor box to the board. So we put this in the middle of our microphone chain. So we did the same for vocal mics. We just went out of the vocal mic, down into the Rolls amp, and out of the Rolls headphone amp to the console. And this doesn't change the signal at all. You're just saying how much you want to hear of that microphone. So for our electric guitarists, they could still have full control of themselves. Our vocalists, they could turn themselves up. Now, the issue with all of this is none of this is being EQ'd. So a microphone is the dead, dry sound of a mic. It's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but it still makes it work. So this way, again, we could have 8 musicians on our stage sharing 4 monitor sends on the board, and they all had some sort of individualized control. Now, this headphone amp is around $50, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later. We have an Amazon Prime subscription that we use that makes purchasing really easy. You get free 2-day shipping, and it's just really nice that we can go on there and order any of this stuff. So this is just under $50 on Amazon. There's some other brands that sell these. I bought one other to test it out, and I noticed that it had a lot less signal. So you would plug something in and it'd be a lot quieter than this would be. And so this has a lot more straight, true signal to it. It has a ground lift and a stereo and mono switch on it, little jumpers that you can switch out, as well as the power that it takes can be daisy chained off of pedal power. So if you have one of those Boss tuner pedals that you daisy chain power out of, you can actually hook this right into the daisy chain. You don't have to hook up extra cables on your stage, which again is really nice to cut down on clutter. So next we need to figure out how to get our signal from our headphone amplifier up to our ears. And you might say, oh, this is the easy part. And actually, it's still, you got to think about how you're going to make this happen. I'm sure many of us have gone to churches and venues where we see those Avion boxes sitting next to every musician. It just kind of looks junky. It's like, what's this random little mini pedestal you have, and why does it have to be next to you, and why is everybody fiddling with it all the time? It's kind of distracting. Well, we didn't want that, and there's not much fiddling you can do here. You only had 2 things you could touch, so it was like, we're just going to put these guys on the floor, put them by all of our pedals, and we need to figure out a way to get our signal up to us. And soon I realized, well, we got 2 cables dangling. It just kind of looks junky. So we need to figure out how to combine this down. After doing some research, I couldn't really find the cabling that I wanted. So I ended up doing kind of a homemade mega cable is what I like to call it. And what we have here is one of our mega cables, and you can see it's, all combined. And what it is a regular 1/4-inch instrument cable and then a stereo headphone extension. Okay, and what I would recommend is that your stereo headphone extensions you don't cheap out on. Now you don't have to spend a ton of money, but just make sure you buy one that's high quality. I think this is from Monoprice. I can't remember. Yeah, this is a Monoprice cable. It's an awesome cable. The ends don't go bad on it. We bought cables that the ends went bad within like 2 months, and we've had other ones for like a year, and they've been great. And so you just got to figure out which brands to trust. So this is a really great cable, and I'll list out all of the items in the show notes for you later. And then we bought instrument cables. We made sure they're the same length. So they're both, I think, 10 or 15 feet. And then we just combined them with electrical tape or gaff tape. It's not the most elegant thing in the world, but it combines everything down into one nice, neat package. So for our bass guitar, our electric guitars, our acoustic guitar, they can just have what looks like one cable running up to them. They plug one into their instrument and plug their headphones in the other, and they're good to go. So the last piece of the puzzle is your actual headphones. Now you can spend a ton of money on headphones. I mean, a lot of money. You can get custom molds, you can do all of that stuff. But for us, since we were kind of forcing our band to transition over, we wanted to provide in-ears for everybody, so we weren't going to break the bank on this. We also didn't really want people showing up with their pink skull candy earbuds or their white iPhone ones looking like a bolo tie in front of them, something like that. We wanted something that looked uniform and nice and looked more similar to a professional in-ear monitor that you would spend hundreds for. So I did a bunch of research, again on Amazon. I tried to find something that we could get shipped to us in 2 days or less, and that met our price point. What I found was it's from ME Electronics, and they're $20, and they're actually a clear cable, so I don't know how well you can see this, but it's a clear cable, and it actually has a wire mold around the ear, so you can kind of pinch it around your ear nicely, so it goes around the back and down in, and it comes with 6 different silicone tips that you can use, and to get replacement tips, it was only like $3. So this way we could say, every musician, you just keep your tips, and that way we can all share actual headphones, but everyone has their own tips, and we make it all sanitary, because you start having to worry about some random stuff like people's ear wax and gross stuff like that when you start using in-ear headphones. Now these aren't the best headphones in the world, but they do the job. Again, our musicians are more than welcome to go spend hundreds on good in-ears. They can get custom molds and all that kind of stuff, but if they're not gonna buy something really nice, we want them to use these. And what I found is these actually have a really good low end if you get a nice seal, so you just need to have a really tight seal. And they have some pretty big, we call them Christmas trees. They're like a 3 cone one that's pretty large, and really helps get a good seal. I tested them with our bass guitar, and I thought the bass sounded really nice. It was kind of vibrating my head, so I knew that I was getting some good sound from it. The next thing I want to show you is just kind of how we manage everybody's in-ears. We just came up with a nice clean solution to do this that kind of has everything in one place. So let me grab this. Okay, I'm back, and as you can see, I'm now kind of hiding back here behind our storage case. Now, I just went to Home Depot and I found this little storage deal here. Now, it has some nice small drawers that actually are capable of dividing. So there's 30 of these small drawers that you can divide. So you could have 60 different earbuds in here and room for multiple. So if a certain musician has more than one set or something like that, you could fit multiple in each one of these drawers. So all we did was label them out. I grabbed my little label maker. Everyone's got their own little drawer. So before practice, they come and grab their buds out of here. Then down in this next row in the bigger drawers, I have all of our replacement buds / buds for people to try out the first time. And I have them labeled out, large buds, medium, small, so that they can quickly figure out what size they need. Then below that, we have drawers that and you can see that there's none in there right now, but normally this is where we put all of our headphones when they're not being used. Since we're close to Sunday, they're all out on people's stands for the weekend. And then our bottom drawer here, we actually have alcohol swabs and Q-tips. So people can clean their ears as well, their actual ears, and then they can also use alcohol swabs to clean off their buds or clean off their headphones, just to make sure everything's sanitary. And this is all in one container that we can have backstage that's easy for everyone to access. Everything gets stored away and you don't have a chance of losing anything. Before, we had like a flip top case with little things that normally people use for like beads and stuff. The problem with this is once you open the hatch, you open up everybody's hatch, and if somebody would accidentally bump this and it would fall on the ground, you would essentially mismatch everyone's ears and we'd have to start all over again. With this, if basically you're only grabbing your drawer and that's it, so it's a really nice way to organize and store all of your headphone material. So before I close out, just a couple cool things that's happened for us since we switched over to in-ears and switched over to this low-cost solution. Our band's gotten tighter. Again, we're playing with a click track. People are hearing themselves better. They know what they're doing better. So the band's playing together. But also, the money we invested into this still worked when we just recently upgraded to a digital console. Now, we had some cool pros when we upgraded to the digital console. We went from 4 monitor sends to we use 8 for the band, and then we use others for other stuff. But we have the capability to do 16 different stage sends. We actually upgraded to the Behringer X32, which we're absolutely loving. One great part about that board, again, now everyone has an individual send and they can control it all themselves on iOS devices. So iPhone, iPod Touch, iPad, you can use an app on there and you can control your monitor from the stage. So our sound guy doesn't even have to touch monitors anymore, which is really nice. So hopefully this inspires you guys to think about how you can implement in-ears into your situation. I think, again, it will really cut down on stage volume. And one thing a lot of people don't think about is they think in-ears are for big venues and big bands and all that kind of stuff. Actually, in-ears are more important for the smaller the venue you are in, because people are going to hear your stage volume more. If I was in a big arena, I could care less how much volume's on my stage. But I'm in a medium to small size room, and my stage volume, if it's too hot, it's going to ruin everything else. So the smaller the room you are in, the more you should think about getting in-ears, not the less. So again, it's not that expensive, especially when you start to consider amplifiers and actual stage wedges and all of that stuff. Price per person, you're around the same price, if not less, when you do in-ears. So something for you guys to consider. If you guys have any questions or comments or systems that you're using, please leave them on the show notes at ChurchMediaDesign.tv, and make sure you check out the website. There's tons more information on there and resources and stuff going on all the time, so make sure to check all of that out, and I'll see you guys later.